for you. I am so excited for our next presenter. Dr. Raquel Garzon is here to talk about creating a mindset of movement. Let me tell you about Dr. Garzon. I met her. Most of the speakers I meet when I get to go to these wonderful conferences throughout the country. I was able to sit in an intensive educational seminar, and I'll say intensive twice, with Dr. Garzon on the art of resiliency. So I got to spend 2 days with her. And I believe this was San Diego, or it might have been another spot, but I learned so much. I was so impressed with her. And as soon as I got back to Michigan, I contacted her because I wanted her to be a part of our Worksite Wellness Conference here. And I wanted her to be able to share her expertise with our MESSA members. Raquel Garzon is the president and founder of Revitalize Project. As a speaker and a thought leader, she has delivered inspirational and valuable health performance leadership content to thousands of high performers and executive audiences from 35 of the top Fortune 100 companies, as well as 12 CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. Raquel creates and designs customized programs for organizations to meet the unique needs and demands of each client. Okay, so she is somebody, if you're looking for a speaker for something you're having at your district or educational institution, definitely pass her name on. Dr. Garzon earned her Doctorate of Health Science degree with a concentration in global health from Nova Southeastern University. She holds a bachelor's degree in nutrition from the University of Florida and a master's in nutrition from Texas A&M University. And she knows her stuff. I know the first conference, as we waited for the presenter, we sat up and got nutrition advice from her while we sat at the table. She served as an assistant professor at New Mexico State University and as the wellness specialist for corporate extension for the state. And I can go on and on about Dr. Garzon, but I will not hold you. I will let her come up and talk to us about, and I say come up, but come to the platform and talk to us about creating a mindset of movement. Thank you, Dr. Garzon.
Thank you so much, Rhonda, for having me back again. It's so great to be here with you. And I'm going to be talking about creating a mindset of movement. My opening slide might look familiar because Jim Porter just had the same picture in his presentation. And I laugh. I think great minds think alike. I thought I had pulled up my presentation by accident, Jim, and on top of yours. It scared me. So I'm going to be focused really on mindset. So I'm not going to be doing like actual exercise and movement with you because I'm going to leave that to Rhonda and her team. She's an expert in that. What I'm going to be talking about is how you can use your mind to help you implement maybe what you already know in movement and exercise, and maybe what you might be struggling to implement. And a lot of times we look at external barriers as getting in the way, which they do, and we're going to acknowledge that. But a lot of times it's our own selves that get in our own way. And so we're going to be looking at how we can really use the science of neuroscience to really get out of our own way and implement movement and exercise the way that we envision for ourselves. What I love about Jim's presentation is he touched on a lot of subjects I'll be touching on, and so I don't have to teach as much about mindfulness because he already covered that thoroughly. So thank you, Jim, for doing that. You did a great job. So what I want to start with is, first, I want to see if you guys have annotation tools. If you remember, if you've been in any of my other presentations, I like to use the stamping tool, which is under View Options next to you are viewing Raquel's screen. The Annotate has some stamps. And if you find that and you would like to annotate on the screen, what I'd love to know is if you have had any of these goals in your life around movement or exercise. So these are just some of the common goals that you will see when it comes to movement or exercise. So you guys can tell me if you're able to annotate or not. Yes, I see annotation happening. So again, it's where in green you see you are viewing Raquel's screen, View Options, you hit Annotate, it opens up a new bar and there's stamps. You can choose hearts and you can also draw on there. So awesome. So I see that everybody is marking. If there was something that you wanted to write in, I gave you an option there, be able to do a specific thing. I once had a goal of being able to do 10 pull-ups. I still have not hit that goal ever, but we might have very specific goals like that. And so hopefully you can relate to some of this. Stress less. Yes. So, Jim talked about that. Please use my stress tools in order to address that. And lots of people marking that. So I see the love there, Jim, for your content and the need for it. So yeah, so we have a lot of goals in movement. A lot of what gets in the way is not the fact that we don't know what to do, right? So this is the whole point. We know that maybe we want to get stronger and we have to lift weights. But then we're like, oh, can't you just give me a pill for that? I really don't have the time or the bandwidth or whatever it is to actually go and do that. So that's what we're going to try to address here. So feel free to keep marking. I'm going to keep going, but you can mark as I go through here. You can start to mark the barrier. So what happens is we have these goals and we have what's called the knowing doing gap or the wanting doing gap. We know something, but the follow through is not there. We want to do something. We're super motivated and pumped up about it, but it's hard to do because we have all of these different obstacles. So this is what I hear from people. Once again, if you can relate to maybe, when you're thinking about exercise, because I really want to focus this on movement and exercise in our lives. For you, what are the biggest obstacles that you encounter? What does this look like? And of course, we've just talked about stress. And the reason I have mindfulness in this presentation is because the way that we approach and handle the stressors that come our way can influence whether we choose to exercise or not that day. And so I really want to try to address what we can from here. Now, obviously, I'm not going to address things like, if you've got cultural or family pressures or social types of things, but what I can do is help you to address the mindset that you might have around those things so that you can challenge your own mindset. I love, some of the things that, Jim talked about is things that I teach. Don't believe everything you think, really putting your thoughts on trial. They're not facts. And those are some of the things that really contribute to a mindset. So I see that every single obstacle has been marked. That is A-okay. That's what typically happens here. So lots of different things that can get in the way. So my goal is to really help to provide you with some tools that help you to deal with all of those external things and then your own internal things. So we might be able to do some things for our internal selves to be able to get ourselves to, really engage in movement and exercise the way that we would like. And I can help you to change your mindset around things that you can't necessarily control. So you may not be able to control your work hours. You may not be able to control a lot of the scheduling types of things or all of the expectations that people have of you. But what I can help you to do is to change your mindset around how you think about those things so that they don't get in the way of something that you really want in your life. So I see, thank you for carving out the time for all of it. Absolutely, that's a really, really big challenge. So thank you all for marking these sorts of things, because this helps me to understand, what you're facing. So if I'm going to summarize it, these are like the pictures that I use a lot of times, that represent kind of the things happening in our lives, the feeling of, feeling stress or overwhelm, burnout, maybe feeling like you're living Groundhog Day. You get on that hamster wheel, you run, and then you're like, oh my gosh, what do I have to show for it? Every day kind of feels like a remake of the day before. And then what happens is our system responds to these things in very specific ways. And one of the ways that we're naturally programmed to respond to these sorts of things is to eat food when it's available to us. It's a coping mechanism. And when we don't implement the productive strategies when stress comes our way, we're going to feel extra hungry and we're probably going to overeat. So if you can relate to that, there's nothing wrong with you. You're not flawed. You don't lack discipline. You're not an overeater, addicted to overeating, and you're responding in a natural human way to the things that are going on around us and how we're programmed to respond. We're programmed to withdraw. We're programmed to go numb when we need to, if that's self-protective in some way. And the last thing you want to do when you're trying to be self-protective and conserve is go move and exercise in your life. That's really hard to mobilize yourself when you're in that mode. And then hopefully you can relate to this, the two people on, the shoulders there. When we're dealing with a lot of negative stress that's coming our way and we don't feel like we have the strategies to really deal with it, we give into what's called instant gratification or temporal discounting. It's what feels good right now. I don't want to think about the future and living 20 years from now because I barely got through today. So what's going to help me feel good today? Netflix, alcohol. It's certainly not going to the gym and lifting weights, right? So those are natural human responses. And I just say that because we beat ourselves up for things like, what is wrong with me? There's nothing wrong with you. You are a human being and you are being put in conditions and under demands and challenges that literally cause us to make these types of choices. So what I would like to do is try to give you some strategies that will help you to perhaps process this in a different way, create more constructive ways of responding to these sorts of things in our lives. And so in order to do that, I want to explain a little bit of neuroscience to you, but in a super fun and simple way. So what we do or don't do is really just a reflection of what's going on in our mind. That's it. It's an equal sign at the end of an equation. So your movement and exercise behaviors are a result of how your brain takes in all of the stuff happening around us, all of the stuff happening inside of us, and how your emotional and rational brain process that information. And if your emotional brain says, oh my gosh, I've got more than I can handle, a behavior may be to not exercise that day. If your rational brain justifies and says, listen, you've got a lot going on, you've got kids, you've got a job, you've got all of these things happening, it would just be unreasonable and selfish for you to take time out for yourself to go exercise when everybody else is counting on you, you're not going to exercise. And that's just how the brain works. And so what we can do is look at how the brain works and say, how can I, if I really think movement and exercise is going to be important to me, not just long-term in my goals and my purpose and who I want to be, but it's going to actually be helpful to me now. I'm going to feel better. I'm going to have more energy. I'm going to be less tense or sore. I'm going to be more resilient because I know when I exercise, it actually makes my brain more resilient. It makes my immune system stronger, and I certainly can't afford to get sick. And so what are those things that really are motivating for you to exercise, and how can we almost hack the brain, maybe is a good way to put it, reprogram the brain in a way in which it allows you to actually do that with everything that you have going on. So hopefully that sounds good to you. And what I want to start with is this concept of our senses and the influence that they actually have. And I'm going to focus on exercise and movement, and then you can mark anything that you relate to. So we have 5 external senses. Those are the ones that we typically hear about, right? Our sight, hearing, touch, smell, and taste. But we've also got these internal senses, interoception, internal sensations like pain and discomfort, temperature. Are we hot? Are we cold? It's also things like hunger. Am I super hungry right now? Our enteric nervous system basically are the gut feelings that we get, and it also contributes to how anxious we might feel. We have neurotransmitters in our guts that communicate with our brain, so if we might have anxiety that's sort of coming from our gut. And then we've got these other things like vestibular and kinesthetic, and I'm going to describe some examples when it comes to movement or exercise. So here's what I want you to think about. You had really good intentions to exercise. You said, I'm going to do it today. You had it in your calendar. Have you ever walked into a gym and seen people working out and you're like, oh my gosh, I am so not in the right place. I'm getting out of here. I do not know how to do this equipment. Oh, look at how all of these people look. It's so intimidating. And just the sight of the gym or something that you're seeing is completely off-putting. So if you can relate to that, just mark that. That just happened to me. I normally belong to this gym that's like super hardcore, and I walked in feeling all motivated, and I see some people and I'm like, oh, what am I doing here? Eject, get me out, right? I'm also very sound sensitive. So I am on the autism spectrum. I have sound sensitivities, texture sensitivities, all kinds of things. And sometimes when I go into a place and it's really loud and there's all of this loud music and there's just all of this stuff going on. It's like a shutdown for me. So if you might be sensitive to, maybe it's the type of music they're playing when you go exercise, maybe you need music and you forgot your headphones and you're like, forget it, I'm not working out. There's no way I can work out without music, right? So our senses play this huge role on how motivated we feel and what we're going to do. So touch. So it could be certain equipment, you don't like the way that feels, and it feels all slimy and sweaty and it's yucky. And there's all kinds of things from a tactile perspective. Workout clothes, when they get sweaty and how that feels on your skin, you're like, oh, that dry fit stuff is so gross. I just hate it. I hate the way that the sweat feels on my neck and my hair, and then la, la, la. And so I have a lot of those things as well, these texture issues, right? You might smell stinky people in the locker room or gym and be like, I'm out of here. I don't want to smell this, while I'm working out. It is amazing how we really just don't notice a lot of times. We just lose maybe that motivation to work out, and we don't notice how much just our external senses, what we're looking at, what we're hearing, what we're feeling, influence if we're going to work out, what we're going to do, if we're going to stay with it, and how hard we're going to work. We just don't realize it. So just tuning into yourself and knowing this can help you to problem solve this in some way. Maybe a gym isn't the right, experience for you. Maybe you just start to, accommodate, just like we do accommodations for kids in school or people. You need to accommodate yourself. You need to help yourself to feel comfortable so that you're not triggered. I'm going to give you some other examples. When it's hot, when it's cold, do you know how many people I hear say, oh, it's too hot to work out, it's too cold to work out, it's too rainy to work out, the rain hurts my joints, all of these things. Those are real, true feelings. If you have lower back pain, if you've got knee pain, I have lupus. Yesterday, I had a lupus flare up and I literally couldn't bend my legs or my arms yesterday. The pain and the discomfort that I had in all of my joints was hugely significant. I had to cancel my mountain biking ride, which was the right thing to do, But those sensations of pain and discomfort and those things that we're feeling give us feedback. When we're anxious, when we feel this gut feeling of, this doesn't feel right, we're supposed to listen to that. People who feel off balance and clumsy and like you don't have coordination, that's the vestibular and kinesthetic system. It's really hard to get people to want to work out when they've got this feedback that their body doesn't do what they want their body to do, that you're feeling, you get on an elliptical and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to fall over, or you get on something else and you feel unstable. And so I just want you to really tune in. This is where mindfulness becomes really, really helpful. Tune in when you are feeling overwhelmed, like I wanted to work out, but now I don't. Tune in. What are you feeling? What's going on? What senses are you kind of connecting with that might make you feel this way? And how can you problem solve that? How can you create stability so that you don't feel that lack of balance? What can you do so that you don't feel this clumsiness or like you're going to fall over, or you're going to drop the weight on your foot or wherever that might be? So that's the first step. Acknowledge the senses, because all of that information comes in and your brain has to figure out what to do with all of that. So those are just a fraction of the examples of the things that can really influence whether we're going to work out and what we're going to do and how hard we're going to do it. So hopefully that makes sense to everyone, and you've got some things to think about and problem solve so that you can really get the results that you're looking for. So once the senses come into our brain, they go to our emotional brain, and our emotional brain has to decide what it does with this information. So it says, for example, am I under threat? Am I feeling fearful? Is there some kind of a problem here that I need to address? So this is what the emotional mind is working on. And it's very sensitive, not to just what I covered, like what I just covered, but now it adds in all of these other things that we're facing in our work environment. And if our emotional brain gets triggered, fear and anxiety behaviors come out of that. That's just a natural response. So here's how it affects movement and exercise. A fear and anxiety response by the emotional brain is reward seeking. So what it looks for is things that feel good right now, like pleasure stuff, and at the same time avoiding discomfort or anything that's going to take extra work. So imagine this, you've been triggered by something in your emotional brain. The last thing you want to do is go and work out. Because for most people, now there are exceptions, there are people who go, yes, working out is so great, it's the best, that when I'm anxious and I'm stressed and everything has gone wrong in my day, that is the first thing I go do, right? But most people have trained themselves to respond that way. The natural human instinct is not to do that. It's to avoid spending too much energy. It's to find something that feels good now. So you're definitely going to be tempted by Netflix. You're definitely going to be tempted by going out to eat instead, meeting friends at the bar, just doing anything but that, right? And so what is important to understand are what are the potential triggers. And when we look here, and you actually have a handout that you will get if you haven't gotten it, that has all of this stuff in it so that you can really evaluate for yourself what could be those triggers for you. So a lack of sleep is a huge one. I'm going to talk about sleep here in a moment. Hunger, like I said, the interoceptive sensation of hunger can also cause this. But look at all of the other things that are on this list and think about the things that you face on a daily basis in the job that you have, as a parent, as a son or daughter, as a community member, just all of the things that are going on. Overwhelmed, excess demands, not feeling like you have enough time to do things. And I saw that on, somebody wrote in scheduling it all in. So scarcity, the brain is very, very sensitive to the sensation of scarcity. Not having enough of something automatically puts your brain into this emergency mode. Negativity around you. Have you ever felt like super motivated, bunch of negativity around you, and it just brings you down? You don't even feel like working out now. You don't feel like getting up and doing all of these things. Not having control is another one. Excessive change. How much change are we facing? So these sorts of things, and again, if you want to mark things that you see on here that you go, oh my gosh, for me, this is what gets in the way of movement and exercise. So I want you to hone in. I know that you face a lot of these, but what can you connect to maybe skipping exercise or skipping out on some of the things that you need to, you should or want to or need to do from a movement or exercise perspective? Is it worry, that just paralyzes you and you just go, oh, why even work out? It's like, what's going to happen in the future? Does it really matter if I work out or not? Right? So it's all about that context and what your brain does with it. So if we can begin to understand which of these are influencing us, so if you realize that it's feeling overwhelmed and excess demand and that's triggering you, you have two options. We can change our mindset so that we don't see ourselves as being overwhelmed and having excess demands. It's all about the interpretation of that, right? Or we can develop methods to calm the emotional brain, even though we're feeling overwhelmed, so that we can still do the things that we want to do. So we have a couple of options there. So pain and discomfort. Okay, so you guys are with me here, right? When we have conditions and injuries and things that are going on, it makes it really hard. That's a very basic internal signal to protect us that makes us not want to, exert ourselves. Loneliness is a huge one, and we have so much loneliness going on right now. And it's like when you feel alone, why invest in myself? What is that for? Where is that going? Where is that taking me to? And so being able to either address the loneliness, being able to reframe the loneliness and that mindset into a different place, or being able to still work through that loneliness and give something back to ourselves. Those would be some of the options that we would have. So feeling left out, see this loneliness and feeling left out, we don't, usually when you hear people talking about exercise and movement and helping someone problem solve that, you don't hear these sorts of things being talked about. We talk about, let me find you another gym. Let me find you a group class. Let me find you an app. And those are all great things to have. But if we don't address the underlying issue of what's really getting in the way, you can have all the tools in the world, but you won't be able to implement them. And then you think it says something about you, and it doesn't. All of these things are naturally there for a reason. And so there's nothing, again, flawed about you. But if we can figure out what the root cause is, if you can figure out what that is, then you can begin to actually address it, and it unlocks possibilities. Now you want to do these things that you've been, struggling with. So that's the idea there. So thank you guys for marking this. This really does help give me some insights into some of the things that you're facing. And it helps me to, to give examples here. So when you're triggered, these are just all the things that can happen. So when I normally do these programs, all of these get check marked. I say asterisk skipping exercise only because that's my focus for today. So that is a natural response. Okay, that's a natural response, human mechanism. I'm going to keep repeating that so that you guys don't think there's something wrong with you in any way, shape, or form. So, let's look at the rational brain now. So we talked about the senses. We've got all of these things that can influence whether we want to work out or not and what we do. Then we've got the emotional brain. Let's say we've got all of those under control. We've got the senses covered. We've got our emotional brain covered. Now we get to the meat of the brain, the great thinking, the response choice. I can get myself to do all of these great and wonderful things because that's a very, established brain center that helps us to make the best decisions possible. So once you get to the rational brain, we must be good to go, right? Well, the rational brain also has some flaws. I want to point those out because I do want you to learn a really important lesson from understanding the emotional brain and the rational brain. The rational brain has some very constructive and helpful areas, but it also has areas that are self-protective to us. So the brain has self-protective mechanisms across the board, the emotional part and the rational part. So here's the self-protective piece of the rational brain. Let's say that you intended on working out that day and you didn't for whatever reason. Now your brain goes, I was supposed to work out and I said I was going to work out and I didn't work out. What do I do with this information? This really feels uncomfortable. So now it has these great tools it can use. It can rationalize. Well, I did have it in my calendar, but then all of these things came up. People were counting on me. I had all of these fires. Those things were urgent. I had to address them. So I just couldn't make it work. I really tried and it was in there. It wasn't all of these things happened. Okay. Besides that, I also have some pretty good genetics. And so, I don't have to work out probably as often as other people. I mean, I'm not like, I feel pretty good. Nothing really hurts. So I think I'm good to go. It's just a day, whatever, it's fine. So we rationalize, we justify, we have this whole great explanation. Or we choose new information. I read a study that when you work out, you just get more hungry and then you just eat more. So then I'm working out to cancel out what I'm eating more. So why don't I just cut down to the bottom line and I just don't work out so I'm not extra hungry and everything's good, right? So we read, and I don't really want to be too bulky. And I read that if I work out, I'm gonna get bigger than I already am. So that doesn't make sense. And so, yeah, then I'm just not going to work out. So we try to find information that helps to justify and kind of reinforce our cause. We might distort or deny, whatever is going on. Like, well, I do a lot of yard work. So that counts as both aerobic and resistance training. And if you count all the times I pick up groceries and kids and move stuff around, it's really like, I've done like a whole workout for like hours today, right? So we distort maybe what we're doing to kind of feel better about what's going on. We might also just avoid. So somebody says, oh yeah, you said you were going to work out yesterday. How'd that go? Oh my gosh, did you see the weather today? And did you see the news? And so we just avoid talking about it. Or maybe we minimize it and say, oh, you think that I don't work out enough? You should see that person. That person's way worse than me. I do a lot more than that. Or, I just skipped once. It really wasn't that big of a deal. So we try to minimize this impact of what we're doing. So I don't know if any of you can relate to any of these. Which one's your go-to, you think, when it comes to movement and exercise? Which one have you gotten really, really good at, do you think? Or maybe it's a few. Okay, the most common one is, rationalize, justify. That's the most common. We're super good at that one. Changing the subject. You guys are good at that, huh? That's interesting. Okay. Minimizing, choosing the information. We got a lot of these covered. And here's what's helpful about it. When you can figure out what you're doing, when you're going, oh man, I'm rationalizing, I'm justifying, it does help us to address that and maybe be honest with ourselves. So again, this is don't believe everything you think, right? This whole concept here. Challenge those thoughts, challenge those ideas that you have for yourself there, because they're not based in 100% truth. They're real. So I have another saying that says real but not true. It feels real, those explanations that you're giving, but they're not 100% the truth. And anytime there's not 100% truth, there's wiggle room to make a change in whatever it is that you're thinking. So it is good to know what method. Okay, so now I'm going to give you one extra thing. When you don't work out, I want you to pause. Instead of beating yourself up, what I want you to do is become like a scientist, like a neuroscientist. And you're going to step back and you're going to say, okay, I didn't work out, or I didn't move enough today. I said I was going to get up every hour and do something and I didn't do that. Pause and then say, was it my emotional brain or was it my rational brain that more influenced my decision not to work out? And here's how you know. When it's your emotional brain, what happens is that later you feel guilty about it. You feel regret, you feel guilt. You're like, why did I skip the workout? Man, oh, what is wrong with me? No, no, no. You're kind of frustrated about it, that sort of thing. When you made the decision with the rational brain, you feel pretty justified. You feel like you've got a good case on your hands. If you ever got taken to court about it, you could defend your kind of position on it. So there's really not that regret and there's not that guilt. You feel pretty justified. And if you start to see a pattern, it helps you to figure out where you need to address the issue. I look like I do this more emotionally, which means that if I can find more tools and strategies to help my emotional brain, which mindfulness is one of them, if I can find calming strategies, deep breathing exercises, enhancing my vagal tone, reducing my triggers, whatever that might be, you're going to be much more successful with exercise. If you find that you're not really feeling too bad about it and you're pretty justified and you're like, yeah, well, I didn't work out because of this, and you're feeling pretty confident about that, that's that rational brain. There's a lot of work to do there. That's actually harder to address because some of those ideas, beliefs, or attitudes or thoughts really get embedded, but they can be addressed. Mindfulness helps, but also this notion of challenging your own thoughts and challenging your own mind. So that's like a homework I'm going to give you. When you skip exercise, I want you to step back and try to figure out if it's that emotional or rational brain so that you can figure out how you're going to approach that next time and what you could do differently. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about some strategies. These strategies are going to help you to manage triggers of the emotional brain. They're going to help you with your rational brain. So let's see what those look like. So I'm going to start off with a very big trigger to not exercising, and that is not getting enough sleep. When you don't get enough sleep, even for just one night, our system is in survival mode. And the way that it's going to try to compensate for a lack of sleep is to reduce the amount of energy that you spend that day. So you're going to want to take elevators and escalators. You're going to want to sit down as much as possible. Your brain is going to try to convince you not to expend energy due to that lack of sleep. So you really need to prioritize sleep. It's very hard to work against that system. So here, and this is in your handout, so I'm not going to go through this in great detail. I want you to find strategies for yourself. If you're not getting 7 to 9 hours of high quality sleep, then you need to figure out how to problem solve that. It's going to be really hard to work and exercise and move when your brain is telling you to conserve energy. So that's number one. Here's another one that's physical. Nutrition. When you are hungry, so if you go too long without eating and you're eating things that maybe like, if they satisfy hunger for like 30 minutes and then you go crashing back down, when you're hungry, it does trigger survival mode. And in survival mode, you're not going to want to work out. So that's, again, a compensatory mechanism by the system. So what you want to do is not get too hungry. If you get too full and then you get sleepy, well, what happens? The last thing you want to do is go exercise because your system is telling you that it needs to, sleep and go into a mode until all of this stuff is processed. You have blood that's in your digestive system. It's not in your muscles supporting having energy in your muscles. So nutrition, just as a baseline, like I'm not going to get into all the details, but just the basics of what do I eat that makes me feel good and have energy? What can I eat that it lasts longer so I don't feel hungry 30 minutes later? And what can I do to not overeat and just eat small amounts so I'm satisfied? Whatever that looks like for you. Here I am, a dietitian, and I'm always a promoter of autonomy. What do you think makes you feel good? And if you can do that, again, you get yourself out of survival mode so that you can go exercise. Okay, so here's the next one. For the next one, what I want to talk about is, let me see if, did I miss it? Let me just make sure I didn't miss one here. No, I didn't miss it. Okay, so this is related to some of the stuff that Jim Porter was talking about and some of the stuff that you can probably get in My Stress Tools. How can you calm the emotional mind? How can you make it less jumpy? So there's two things here. How can you make it less jumpy overall so that you don't get triggered as often? And once you get triggered, how can I calm it quickly so that I can get back on track and not be derailed by that emotional part of my brain? So one of the breathing techniques that I use is the 4-7-8 breathing technique. And this is where you inhale for a count of 4, you hold your breath for a count of 7, and you exhale. You extend that exhale for 8 counts. You may have been in a program where I've done this before. The reason I like 4-7-8 breathing is if you have to count and you have to do certain things on a certain count, it forces you to be mindful because you're having to pay attention to what you're doing. And second is that this type of breathing specifically increases vagal tone. It stimulates the vagus nerve, and the vagus nerve is the longest nerve that runs through your body. It's in charge of the parasympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system is what counteracts fight or flight. So when you're in fight or flight, you're in the sympathetic nervous system. And what we want to do is activate parasympathetic nervous activity, and that's through the vagus nerve. So the 4-7-8 breathing, because the exhale extends for a longer period of time than the inhale portion, your vagus nerve connects into your diaphragm, and this is one way to quickly stimulate that nerve. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to do 3 rounds of 4-7-8 breathing so that you can experience what that feels like and decide if that's something that you think could work for you when you're feeling like your emotional brain has been triggered by something. You're feeling overwhelmed and anxiety, fight or flight. You're feeling even withdrawn. Feeling withdrawn is a fight or flight mechanism. So are you guys ready? I will count it out for you so you don't have to work too hard. I will count it out. We're going to start with the first round. You can close your eyes if you want, but you don't have to. Here we go. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we just did 3 rounds. That would be the minimum. I would encourage you to do 5 rounds of that. And here's what you may have found. I mean, we have a lot of people here in the room, so we're not going to, share our experiences necessarily. But this is what I hear from people, that the first round is really hard. Trying to time out that 4 seconds, and then you might feel like I can't hold my breath for 7 seconds and still have breath to exhale for 8 seconds. And by the second round, you got a little bit better. And by the third round, you had that down pat, which is amazing that in just a couple of rounds of that, you can already regulate intentionally your breathing. It can also give you feedback. If you have trouble holding your breath for 7 seconds or extending that exhale, it could be a sign of what's called hyperventilation syndrome, which means that you basically go all day kind of in this fight or flight mode, breathing real shallow. And that's why it's so hard for you to hold your breath. Obviously, if you don't have other medical conditions, it could just be a sign that you're kind of in this chronic stress zone and breathing shallow. So it's good feedback for you. But doing this does 2 things. One is that it helps you to calm down now because it's activating that parasympathetic nervous system. But if you practice it all the time, it actually increases vagal tone. So you will be triggered less over time, which means you'll have to use this less in the moment. So it's kind of like a good investment, right? Because it really gives back over time. So that's just a method for calming. So that way you can then access your prefrontal cortex and say, okay, what am I going to do? Am I going to let this kind of, kidnap me into decisions that really don't make sense long-term? Or can I access that prefrontal cortex and make better decisions around movement and exercise? Here's the second thing that you can do when you've been triggered is the RAIN method. I've talked about this before, but I'm going to give you an example here when it comes to, let's say, movement or exercise. So let's say that you were triggered and you feel frustrated and you feel anxious and you're like, right, about whatever's gone on in your day. You just want to recognize that. Mindfulness training helps you to at least have these pauses where you can recognize your own emotions and say, man, I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling anxious right now. I'm feeling overwhelmed. So just recognizing that helps. Second is we've been trained a lot of times to push away these types of emotions. Turn it around, turn that frown upside down, right? Like deny it, hide it, put on the poker face, put on the happy face. We are not trained enough to just allow those emotions to exist. Allow yourself to be frustrated. Allow yourself to be anxious. It's telling you something. It's giving you feedback. And that feedback is really important because that allows you then to get to the I, which is investigate. What is going on right now in my life that is causing me to feel frustrated? That's causing me to feel anxious right now? What was it exactly that was said? What did I see? What happened that moved me into this emotion? And as you start to peel back the layers of what got you there, so it could have been that, your boss asked you to do something extra and you already had your day planned out and they do this all the time. They're not considerate. They're not respecting blah, 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 whatever that looks like. And then that reminds you of when you were a kid, and then it brings up all of these other things, right, that go along with it. Here's where we get to the need part. And this is really important. Our perceived needs sometimes in those situations when I'm frustrated, when I'm anxious, when I'm doing this. What is it? Oh, it's to eat that pint of ice cream and watch Netflix, right? Because that's what society tells us to do. That's what the movies tell us to do when we're feeling like this way. Let's meet at 5 o'clock at the bar and I'm just going to tell you all the things going on in my life. That's a perceived need, meaning that it's pushed, it's influenced in society. We buy into this, that's what we need, right? But what do we really need? If we're honest with ourselves, we might find that what we need to do is go work out, take a walk in nature, go do something nice for ourselves, go do something nice for someone else. Maybe I need to have a conversation and set some boundaries. When we're authentic in terms of what we really need for ourselves, what we'll find is that it opens up a lot more opportunities that are a lot more constructive than the immediate gratification, what we've been sort of told that we're supposed to go get a manicure. Okay, you get the manicure, here are your nails, but did that all go away? Did that really help? And here's what the science shows. Exercise actually does help shift that chemistry into a totally different place. It allows you to lean into those things that you might be feeling. It allows some processing to occur, especially if you're being mindful during exercise. Exercise is not like a fun substitute, like a manicure, taking a bubble bath might be. It actually changes your brain chemistry. So I throw it in there because it is a valid, scientifically proven need that can actually nurture ourselves and get us to where, at least in the right direction of where we need to go. So I just wanted to throw that out there. What are your perceived needs? And then what are your true authentic needs when it comes to things, to really addressing what's going on? So mindfulness, I feel like I don't have to cover this. So let me just tell you in terms of movement and exercise, what this mindfulness does for you. How can you use it to stay on track with your movement and exercise goals? So here's the first thing. Practicing mindfulness on a regular basis will help you to create a better integrated mind between the brain, the emotional brain, and the rational brain. That's why I have the little brain there connected to the heart. When you can create more integration in your brain, what happens is that when things are happening around you that could trigger your emotions, you have more access to your best thinking to help talk you through that. So you say, yeah, I'm feeling this way, but I can do this instead of I'm feeling this way and I'm going to go into this other land where I don't want to, put forth any effort and do anything. So it can help you over time to just handle the things that are going on around you in a more constructive way. it can help you with self-regulation. So the more that you practice mindfulness, the more you're going to be able to override difficult situations and persevere to go exercise, even though it's the harder choice to make. So that's what's key about mindfulness. It helps you to make the harder, better choice. So a lot of the things in our lives that we do are harder, but better. And we recognize that, and we're able to follow through with that. Exercise is just one of those that, yes, it's harder and better. Eating well, harder, better. But those are really easy to slip out of because we're the only ones accountable to those things. We're not accountable to anyone else for that. It's just ourselves. So we can let ourselves off the hook. When you practice mindfulness, you are much more likely to have that self-regulation that says, yes, this is hard, but I recognize it's better, so I'm going to go do it. Even if it's just for 10 minutes, even if it's just for 15 minutes, even you'll be able to do that better. The other thing that mindfulness can really help you with is while you're exercising, tuning in. A lot of times we're trained to tune out. That's why they put TVs. They put all kinds of things to try to help us pretend we're not exercising, right? Instead, if we actually practice mindfulness while we're exercising and we tune in, it can be self-motivating. What am I feeling? What's changing within me? I can feel that this is working. I feel the blood surging. I feel the energy reaching all of my cells. I feel my nutrients being transported. I feel my muscle actually doing this work. And the just feeling my muscle doing the work makes me feel like I'm going to see and feel results from doing this. So again, instead of tuning out, which so much around us it's tempting us to tune out, what we want to do is tune in, and that you can actually get a better workout, more connected, that gets you better results with better adaptations. The other thing that it can help you with is to tune into why you're exercising, this mindfulness. I'm not just exercising because I'm supposed to hit 30 minutes on some sheet and some tracker and some app. I'm doing it because my family really matters to me. And I know that this is an investment in them. When I'm here and I'm doing this, it's an investment in self-care. It's an investment in my health. It's an investment in my energy and my mood. And that is worth it. And so that mindfulness allows you to bring all of these sorts of ideas in to get you to work out, feel that workout, and get the most results from that. So I really encourage you to practice mindfulness. You have so many tools available to you, and there's so many ways to do it. So I really encourage you to check that out and really invest in it. Okay, so here's the mindset piece. And here are some things that I want you to think about. When you're in that situation, right, that let's say that you don't work out and you're rationalizing, justifying, so this is all about the rational brain. Just pause and you can start to ask yourself some questions. What am I thinking right now? So is it justification? Am I kind of minimizing, kind of write out the reason, like go sit down and write it out. Why am I not working out right now? Well, blah, 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 and this happened and this is what's going on in my life and blah, blah, blah. And then you pause and say, what I just wrote, what I just thought about, is this aligned with my purpose in life? Thinking like this and using this mindset and this kind of lens to see the exercise through, is it taking me where I want to go? Is it constructive? Is this story that I'm writing here helpful to me? And if it's not, then you have an opportunity to create a new one. You get to write your own book. Every day is like a page in the book. What is that page going to say? What is that going to look like? And anytime you want to, you can write a whole new page that day and what that sounds like to you and where that's going to take you. Now, we can also get into what's your mindset around exercise, because how you go into it also matters. So do you say to yourself, oh, I got to go work out today. Oh, I have to do strength training. I have to do whatever. Yeah, I have to. I was told, I guess. Or is it, wow, I have this opportunity to use my body in a way that gives me so many benefits. I have a body that works. Like for me, when I wake up and my joints actually move, I take advantage of that day, because yesterday I was walking like Frankenstein. My legs don't bend, my arms don't bend. When I have a lupus flare up, I'm at the mercy of what's going on. I can't just override that. So when I woke up today and I could bend my legs and my arms, I was like, yes, I get to use my body parts in a normal way. Like, that's exciting to me. Now, I don't want you all to have to get lupus or some other condition to appreciate the fact of what your body can do and that we should use it, right? So if you can just shift that mindset, I have the opportunity to do this. I get to do this. I get to express my body physically and do cool things with it that it was meant to do. Maybe that changes everything. And then maybe it's really connecting to what motivates you to exercise. It might not be for appearance, or it might not be for health or weight like other people. It might be just to be part of a group and not feel so lonely, because, you know, people mark that. It might be just to be able to feel like you can live independently for the rest of your life without help. You know, it might be that you just enjoy doing certain things. You know, maybe you choose an exercise because it doesn't make you sweat as much. I don't know. But you get to choose that. No one chooses that for you. Figure out what it is that you could get excited about, or what could motivate you, or what would guide what you choose to do. And how can you structure it in a way that's more opportunity-based and positive-based? And I chose to do it versus I've been told I'm supposed to do it, right? That never feels good. So you want to find that intrinsic motivation for doing that. And then if you can create a mindset in which you say, well, I'm going to do this while I'm already doing this other thing, which I really enjoy and I like. I'm going to do this for my family. And that's the mindset I'm going to use. Every step that I take, I'm showing them how to create balance, how to do self-care, how to be a role model, how to balance a job and take care of yourself. I want to demonstrate that. So you can create a mindset that really helps you to look at this in a different way versus an extra thing that takes time out of your calendar and takes you away from doing something else. So you see the difference there? When it takes you away and it's competing with other important things in your life, that's not the same way as integrating it into something in your life that already matters, or seeing it as an investment that gets payoff towards something that matters. So I want you to think about that. The other thing is that in a mindset, we've got this inner voice. It influences so much our beliefs and how we interpret things, and so much. And the only thing that I want to talk about in inner voice, because I can do a whole 2-hour session on just the inner voice, is really notice to yourself when you're being overly critical, because that can really break you down. So when you say, oh, you're just not disciplined and you can never follow through and what's wrong with you, and you think that's going to motivate you to exercise, like when people, you know, kind of beat themselves up, you think that's going to increase performance. It doesn't. The studies show that it just makes us worse. So you would never do that to motivate someone that worked for you. You wouldn't be like, you suck and you just need to get better because this is unacceptable, you undisciplined, right? So it sounds like this old military way of doing these. They don't even do that in the military anymore because we know it doesn't work. And you would never say that to your kids, you just suck, right? Like that's not a way to motivate. But why would we do that to ourselves then? So you can't be overly critical, but you also can't be overly supportive or permissive, where you go, oh, it's okay, you had a really hard day, so you don't need to do anything like that. Oh, everyone will understand. Oh, it's okay. And you let yourself off the hook. You deserve it. You're in a different zip code. Oh, it's a special occasion. Oh, it's a Monday. No, we know that doesn't work either. You can't get people to do things if you're being also overly supportive and you're not pushing them a little bit. So what you need to find is what I call the tough love. So the tough love is all about, you know, how we truly motivate employees or how we might motivate our kids, right? I want to have expectations. I want you to be accountable, but I want you to feel supported, trusted, and safe in the process. And that's what we want to find for ourselves. How can we talk to ourselves in a way that is motivating, it pushes us, but we're also being nurturing and supportive of ourselves at the same time? And if you can find that balance, it's going to work. Okay, so a couple of last things that I want to give you. I'm talking about movement and exercise. And so when I put this up, a lot of times it's like this notion of like, oh, recovering, that means resting, right? And it could be that. So 2 things that I want you to take away from this slide, and again, this is all in your handout, so you don't have to memorize this or anything. Exercise and movement are a recovery strategy for our minds and our emotions. When we're being pushed all day long, exercise and movement helps us to reset our brain chemistry. The other thing is if we don't get this sort of rest and replenishment and recovery throughout our tough days, we won't want to work out later because the system just wants to go into comatose mode. It just wants to, relax and not do anything. So listening to music at one point in your day, doing a breathing exercise in one point of your day, just drawing a doodle and doing something like that, believe it or not, that makes it more likely for you to exercise later. I know it doesn't seem related, but they are. You have to give yourself these moments of rest and recovery. So you can use movement and exercise to do that, or you can use every other method in the world so that you can then go exercise later at the end of the day, or get yourself to exercise at the beginning of the day, and you're going to get these recovery techniques throughout the day. So think about how you might want to structure that and how that might work for you. This is the last thing that I'm going to leave you with. It's really hard to persevere and to do the hard thing if you don't know why you're doing it. And to understand what your purpose in life is. If you've been in any of my programs, everybody works on purpose for anything that I'm teaching. It doesn't matter what it is, because it has to fit into the context of that. Who matters to you? What's the impact that you want to have? What are the most important values? How do you define success in your life? What are you passionate about? What does that have to do with movement and exercise? Well, how could movement and exercise actually help you to live your purpose better, or for longer, or to bring it to life? Because we know that movement and exercise just isn't for our bodies. It impacts our energy, our moods, our minds, our neurons. If we're going to get, dementia at age 70 versus age 90, it influences so much. We can't extract it out of this. So in some way, shape, or form, movement and exercise is going to be a spark and a helper to your purpose, or the lack thereof could be an impediment to you being able to live your best purpose. So acknowledging and figuring out how those integrate together, I think, are really important. And then the last piece is, you want to live your purpose each day. My goal for people is to feel like they've lived their purpose every day. So that way, if today is your last day, you feel like, wow, I did something with my day. I feel fulfilled, right? And they're not all perfect days, but you can still feel fulfilled, like I did the best that I could today with what I had. I made the best decisions and I invested in all of the right people and things. So how can you use your purpose each day to also help you to motivate you to move and exercise that day? So it's two things. How can movement and exercise help me with my purpose? And how can I take my purpose and use that to convince me that this is a worthwhile investment for me to do this? I'm worth it because of all of the people that I influence, the impact that I have each and every day. So I want you to answer those questions, see what you find out for yourself. I hope that you learned at least one thing in this session that could help you address barriers that could be getting in the way of implementing all the wonderful information that I know you already have on movement and exercise, so that we can unlock the possibilities for you in your life. So thank you so much, Rhonda, for having me once again. Thank you to all of you who have joined. Thank you.